your 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 energy sources. Okay. Actually, I don't have video camcorder on this now, so I think all right. So let's talk about our lab for today. It's actually pretty easy. We're not opening any equipment, but we want to expand on what we talked about last time with BIOS and CPU. So 80% of the business are going to use Windows environment, you know that, or more. So it's important that you know how to configure Windows system, even though Windows is not the most secure, right, or the most efficient, but we want to know how because it's just Microsoft products is widely used. Okay, so there are several ways that you can control and look at your hardware resources. One way that you can do is it tells you to go to control panel. And some of you are familiar with this already. So this is the small icon view. This is just MVC preference, but likely if you install Windows out of the box, you're going to see the category view. Okay, so this is a category view. And in the category view, similar to your settings, you are going to have network and internet. That's basically for your network. Your system and security is here. This is where your Windows firewall is going to be, where you back up and restore, and so on. So when you click system and security, you would see something like this. So in the first step, it tells you to go to your taskbar. You are going to search for control panel, right? And then you are going to open that up. Then this is your control panel. You can change your view. I like to use category view because that's what is, you know, if you buy a new system, you turn it on. If you use that, you're going to see its category view. So I can show my students. So you can go to system and security. So whenever you need to change your firewall setting, it's in system and security. And it's here. You can always search for firewall, right? Everything is searchable on the new OS. And so here's your system. It tells you to click on the system option once you get into system and security. Okay. Sorry, let me share screen. I apologize. So I was on here on control panel. I follow the step and I go to system and it takes me here. Okay. And this looks very similar to what you see with settings. Okay, you can also use that. That's something that was implemented with Windows 7 and later, mostly in Windows 8 and 10, but you would see this is your information. Okay, now here it tells you that there is your processor, the RAM, right? But we don't know the specific type of RAM compared to what we see with CPU-Z in the other lab. And then you would have your product ID and your system information and so on, okay? Your system property, this is your system property. You can also rename your computer, right? In a network environment, we would use it based on, we would have a scheme on how we would name it. And then there are some specification and in your OS. So here, in this network, we're using Windows 10 Enterprise. That is different than your Windows 10 Home or your Windows 10 Pro, okay? The Enterprise has more feature. So if you compare this to your laptop that you have with Windows 10 Home, there is capability with encryption and other things that they incorporated for business environment. So now the enterprise, usually the company, they would pay for per seat. So every computer would have a license and each of those license costs. So Windows specifications just basically list the operating system that we're using, when it was installed, right? Now you just know it as Windows 10, but there are different builds. So whenever you push updates, that could possibly be a new update that would pertain to the new build. However, Windows, Microsoft, they stop using, right? There will not be a Windows 11. or a Windows 12, right? It would just be Windows 10 and an update, okay? So in your assignment, okay, so once you have that information, take a screen capture, put down your processor and speed. So here on mine, I have an Intel i9, and I will pull that up so you can see. Okay, so here is my Intel i9, and I have a 9th generation, and the speed is 3.6 gigahertz. On yours, it might be the i7 because we bought those earlier than the set that one is using up here. So I'm going to go ahead and put i9 9900K. I'll just highlight that so you can see. And then the speed for mine is 3.6 gigahertz. And you want this, like we talked about before, you want this value to be higher. So your standard desktop is going to be about 3 to close to 4, right? There might be some processor that's going to give you like 4.2 top, but we know that most of the things we use is going to be slightly under, unless you crank it up for a game. And then it tells me that it is 64-bit, so it needs to use 64-bit OS. And let me see. So another way that you can look at this information is if you right-click, if you open up your file manager, and if you right-click this PC and you go to properties, it's going to give you the same thing. So that's what we call a property sheet of the system. And that property sheet will give you the detail of your OS, your CPU, and your RAM. Okay. So when you're using 64-bit processor and OS, the minimum RAM is going to be, so 4 gigs is like 3.9 gigs is going to mainly use for OS. So if I only have 4 gig of RAM on my computer for just running my OS, I likely that all my other application will be very slow. So that's why if you have all the newer system now, you normally would have at least 8 gig or 16 gigs would be ideal. And in our case, we have 32 gigs. So there's plenty of RAM for applications. Okay, so if you have an older system and you put Windows 10 64-bit, like an i5 that's capable of upgrading to Windows 10, what will happen is it's going to be slow with the 4 gig. Okay. Now in the older OS, which you will see, like Windows 7 32-bit, okay, you see those laptop and those systems, right? And people throw a lot of RAMs on there. Sure, it's good for applications, but 32-bit tops out too with 4 gigs of RAM. So back then, 4 gigs of RAM was a lot. So in the transition, they had upgraded Windows 7 to 64-bit so we can use more resources and support our application usage. All right. So we are working on 4.1 lab. Okay. So on here, it tells me the device information, right? All of this, and then you also have all of this details here. Now on the new settings, you're not going to be able to see. So what I suggest, if you want to look at the core, you can go to your device manager. Okay. And then on the device manager, you also would see the same information. So if I click this, okay, look at mine, right? So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 logical core. the software sees it as 16 logical core. But in actuality, how many core do you think I actually have physically? 8, right? So when you see something like this, I counted these and there are 16 logical core, meaning that the software sees it. So there are 2 per physical core. Okay. So I'm going to put down for mine. Just so if you, when you look at your device manager and you see that, so I would have physical core and then 16 logical core. So if yours shows like mine, and device manager is a little clearer than what you see in property settings. You expand the processor and it will tell you how many logical core. And then you take that, you divide it by 2, you will get the physical core. Now on the older system, it might only list 4, right? So in that case, basically you have a dual physical core with a quad logical core. Okay, so on the software side, it's gonna double that. And when we did the benchmark last time, we saw how it would be logical is gonna be a little higher than your actual physical. Okay, all else in doubt, go to device manager on Windows and you would see all your hardware. Okay, and you just search device manager, or you can right click Windows button and then you can also see what is it? Is it listed here? Yeah, device manager here. Okay, so right click Windows, you can find that there. You can search device manager, and that's what I'm looking at along with your system property. So in the next answer, I'm going to put down on the Alienware, it has 32 GB of RAM. Okay. And then for your system name, your device ID, and your system name. Now, this button right here changes the name, but when you change the name of your PC, you have to restart. Okay, like at home, you wanted to modify that, you can modify that. Your device name is here at the top. So it would say MPSC 16, which is the room that it's in. And then, they would use some kind of value. So most administrators, they would like to come up with a schematic name. Either it pertains to a physical location, the room that it's in, the department that it's used for, or something like that. Now, security-wise, we don't recommend it like that, but it's just easier for people to do inventory of their system. Okay, so that's the name. So I'm just going to put that down. You can copy that and then you can paste it here. And on your system, if you look at it, it's going to be different, of course. Okay. Now, sometimes at some network, you would see that they would put a sticker with the system name on the actual desktop. So that way they, if they need to do maintenance, they can go directly to that. And then other networks, if they're more fancy, they can use the software to be able to track it. And so it would tell them which system is on based on the name of the system and so on, like network monitoring tools will do that. All right, domain and network is the system connected to. Okay, so on this, because they changed this already, right? I'll show you how you can check the domain. Now, on the old Windows 7, you can actually find all of that detail in the system property. On the Windows 10, they modify some of the specifications on how it's connected to, because they broke it into different tab base. Okay, I'm going to open up command line so you can see. And then we can do an ipconfig/all. So the command that I use is, is this. And this tells us what we needed earlier, which is your system name, right? And the domain that this system is connected to is rccd.net. Now, in an organization like this, they might have several domains. They would have rccd.net, rccd.edu, which you see in your email that's used for your Exchange server for your email. And sometimes you would also see companies use like the same name with the .com. So it depends on what they want. Now, some of the domain name publicly, it is reserved. So, you know, companies will buy domain name and then you have to buy it from them, or you have to pay for their host service. So, and all of these fully qualified domain name in the public, you know, there's organization that manage this worldwide. Okay. So the answer for us, because we couldn't see it in one location, we would say rccd.net. So basically what that is a domain name server or system that's used to manage, right? So when you join these client system, what you're sitting at is the client system. You have to join it to the domain. And in order to join it to the domain, you have to use the same network IP address. Okay, and that's for another class. But just to let you know that you can join it through system property, you just put in the domain information. If you have the same IP address set up for the client system, it's going to be able to see the domain, and that's how you join. Okay, my CIS-28 class, they're going to work on that this week and next week. So we're going to install the Dns Server and be able to do that. All right. So sorry, the direction is because the updates on this is so okay. So what we want to do is we want to look at the device manager. So disregard this part. So advanced system settings for the system hardware device manager button. So you can just go directly to the device manager by right-clicking Windows button or search. And I was in device manager earlier, so you saw that. Okay, so in device manager, we are going to look at disk drives, and this is going to tell us our storage. And disk drives is important because this is where your OS sits and your data is going to sit there, right? And then part of your application executable will sit there. So let's come back here. We're going to minimize the processor. And then we are going to go into your disk drives, which is here. So on here, we saw earlier last time on Monday, we saw that we have the SSD, which is 512 gigs. And then we have the Western Digital, which is going to be 1 terabyte. So most of the more, you know, advanced gaming system like these, you're going to see that it will have multiple drives. And then sometime when you buy a laptop, you only have one type of drive. So we want to use the second drive for data only, and then the OS will sit on the other drive. Why do we want to keep data separate from the OS, do you think? So my solid state is going to be the operating system because it's faster, of course, right? And then why would I put all my data on the other one? So what happens when, so here's my D storage, right? This is the data drive that I'm referring to. You notice that's blank because they didn't put anything here. So when you back up your drive, when you do the backup process, the newer Windows will not let you back up to the main drive, the C drive. Why? Because if this drive dies, you're done. Okay. So they implemented the process. So all your backup files should go into the storage drive. In case this one breaks, you still have your data. Okay. So by practice, we want to put the data on a separate drive in case the first drive fails. Exactly. Okay. So let's answer. How many disks? We have 2. What type of disk? We have a 512 gigabyte SSD, and then we have a 1 terabyte HDD, and that's a Western Digital. And you would see different brand that will be Seagate, right? Or you know, you might have SSD can be produced by Samsung. It can be produced by a lot of different companies. So, and this one, it uses the M.2. And the HDD uses SATA, SATA 3. And different speed in how data is accessed, right? So why do we put the OS on the faster drive? Well, because OS is regularly used. In order to access your data, you have to use your operating system, right? But when you pull your data, it might be a little slower, like your, pictures, your movies, your homework files, your documents, but that's okay. Now, HDD tends to fail faster than SSD, even though, but we should have it in both locations. So if you have essential data, you should replicate this and put it on the cloud, right? All right. Return to device manager. We already talked about the core. So I actually have 16 logical cores and 8 physical core. And how do I know that? I would go to device manager, and then I can go to processor, and then these are the so as you can see, it would say, so think of these as little mini engines, right, in a car, and then it distributed the task across so it can perform better. So subsequently, the more core we have, the more ideal performance that we would get. But there are other factors that play into, your system performance, right? So we can't just rely purely on the information about the core. All right. So yes, so we want to say that that will be the same because we did look at the same information earlier. Is the speed going to be consistent? Yes. Okay, so when we're looking at controllers, those are going to be the cable connection or the connection to your drive. Sometimes these are referred to interface controllers. How we are connecting your storage drives, right? IDE is an older technology. It uses the gray flat ribbon, like what we've seen in the picture for the last week notes. Serial ATA is gonna look like it's flat and it's about the size of your pinky. And on the end of the cable, you would see an L, right? Those are used for hard disk drive or optical drive. And then you also have the ATA PI for also storage drive. And then you have external USB, your USB-E. So that's, but all of these are for internal storage. Okay, so look at this, and then we're gonna go back to here. So small, I can't see. So click on storage controllers. Yeah, they changed the name on the settings on this on the new Windows 10. So what do you see? I see the SATA PCIe. Remember we talked about PCI Express when you're looking at your bus? So all of that is just a pathway to transfer data, right? You can have a super highway to drive your car really fast. That will be your PCI Express, your express highway, right? And then you can have a freeway where you can't drive that fast, but it's good enough, right? That will be the other, like the X4. And then you have the slower lanes where you would have the PCI only. So this one, it has a chipset for SATA PCIe. And then you have the Microsoft Storage Space Controller. That's a software side. So what that does is it's just going to look at your hard drive and then be able to allocate space on the software side, and then your NVM Express controller. Okay, so your SATA chipset, it's using PCI Express, and then your NVM Express that uses the M.2. Okay, so I'm going to just summarize this. So we're going to do a SATA PCIe, and then we have the NVM, what was it? Express. And then the third one is the Microsoft storage one. And this is used to allocate the actual physical space of your drive when your OS sees it. Okay, so what do I mean by that? When you look at disk management like this, so I want to give you, okay, this is a way that we can look at our space in a software level. Okay, so when you look at this, and there will be a chapter that actually 2 chapters that we're going to hit on this. So this is your C drive, and that's standard operating system for Windows, right? And it will tell you that this is active primary partition. So that's just a section of the disk that's going to be used whenever you see active, that's bootable and it has OS. Okay. And then the storage here, we touched on that earlier, that's just space that we can put data in. So why do we need the Microsoft Storage Controller? So we can see this and manage this at the software level. Because even though it's a hardware that we're using, we have to interface with it at the software level. So that's why they put it there. Now, can I resize this? I sure can, right? If I have the privilege to do that, I can change the partitions, right? I can resize this. See how it says shrink volume? I can make it smaller because right now I'm using the whole 1 terabyte for all my data. But what if I wanted to make it smaller and I can put another OS that will be dual boot to this system, so I can make the disk smaller. But just keep in mind that when you do that, you know, in the case if something goes wrong, right, that your data might be lost. So before you do anything to your disk at the software level or at the hardware level, make sure you back things up. Like take a USB and copy some of the files that's important over. And then you can also delete the volume and so on. Okay. Now, why am I not able to do that over here is because you don't want to delete the operating system that you're in, right? So they remove that, but you can still shrink the volume. That means that I can size it down, and so think of it like a house. You can make one room equal to that house, and that's what we're seeing, right? The one big room in that giant house. But what if we want to make it where there are partitions to the house, like you have 4-bedroom house, 2-bedroom house, then you can shrink the volume and you can put in you can divide up the partition for the drive for other usage. Okay. So that's why you have that Microsoft controller thing there. Any questions? So let me highlight this so you can see that those are the answers. All right, so let's look at their display adapter. And we saw some of this when we look. I know it's redundant, but I want to show you many ways to be able to access this. Because when you get to jobs or when you work with employers, sometimes when they interview you, they ask you, how do you look at what video adapters install? How do you know what drives is installed? So in your mind, you have to tell them, oh, in Windows 10, I would go to Device Manager and I would click this and this and this, and I would see it. Or you have to show it to them. Some of them will ask. or you can help someone on the phone if you're doing support or fix computers or whatever, right? So here's my display adapter. We have, so we know that there is a separate adapter that's installed on this. That's the GeForce GTX 1080, right? That's a separate one. And then you do have an onboard one that comes with the motherboard. That will be with your processor, that will be your Intel graphics. Okay. So how many adapters are listed? We actually have 3 because we do have the Freedom Scientific Accessibility Display Adapter driver. This is just a driver though. That's just software. So I'll take that back. I'm going to put 2. Actual adapter is only 2. And then what type of display adapter? So I have an Intel, what was it? UHD graphics 630. And then I have the GeForce 1080. If you want, you can put NVIDIA. I mistyped that. It's GeForce 1080T. All right. Well, it's 1,000 now. It used to be cheaper before.
It was, I bought it when it dipped and it was at 450, and then the week after it went to 250. And went back up.
Yeah. Just the shortage, so.
Yeah.
All right, so we finished with the device manager and system property. I'm gonna close this. I'm gonna go ahead and close this out. Now, when you look at device manager, anytime you see exclamation point, right? Like a yellow exclamation point, that just means that drivers is needed. So you just download the driver, which is the software for that hardware. Now, when you look at the device manager and you see a little red X, that just means that it's disabled or it's disconnected or something is wrong with it. So you need to make sure that you check the physical connection and then the logical connection on the OS, like enabling the device. Right click it and enable. All right, right click Windows button, and then you're gonna go to settings. You can also search for settings. There's About tab here. So click About tab, which is what's shown to you. We saw this earlier. Okay. Take a screen capture. Sorry. So the setting is a little wheel, so you can take a screen capture of that. Hit print screen on the top right of your keyboard, and then you can paste it into, let me show you. So if I do this, Alt print screen or print screen would do it. And then go into Microsoft Word, go right here and then paste it like that. Okay. And yes, the information for number 5 matches because we looked at the same system. So another way to access your system information is through settings. This is a new implementation with Windows 10, right? And you can also search for setting, like I said. All right, in settings, we are going to click on storage. And this is going to show you mainly your C drive, which is your active mounted partitions. And then it would also give you other things that would relate, like application, how much of the storage it's using, right? And then other Now, other would be like large folders, files, user data, and then other people, and then temp files. Likely those will be your internet-based files, like page files. So when you visit a website, it caches some of that, and it would set up the page file and store it. Okay, we'll expand more on storage down the line. Okay, so here, the capacity, we can say that it's roughly what? You saw earlier it was 512 max, right? We're not going to have the complete 512. So the capacity for this, I have 476 and I have 178 gigabyte use. And then I have 298 free. So that means that I can still store files in the free area. So the way Windows use storage, free does not mean, so free is different than unallocated. Unallocated is just mean that it's not assigning it to anything for a certain purpose. And then free is already been allocated, but then you can put files in it. Okay. And then use is just that's already been, files has already been taking up that space. Okay, so how many drives are, so we're gonna go to click on view storage usage and other drives. Okay, and see how it shows that here. And this, we get just more extended. So now we can also see the other drives that's listed there, right? Okay, so we have 2 again. And then what type of drives? We just have Windows C and storage. So Windows C drive and then storage drive. So now, does it have to be the D drive if it's a secondary drive? No, you can actually assign the letter that you prefer in the process of formatting that drive. So drives out of the box is not formatted except for the USB. It's formatted as file allocation table FAT, so that way it's compatible with all different operating systems. But in Windows environment, drives on the newer Windows, we would use NTFS, stands for NT New Technology File System. And that's used to, it's just a file formatting system that would be used to store your data, your pictures, your system files, and so on. Now, like I said, if you just, when you set it up, subsequently, it will just take up the letter D, which is following C, right? You ever curious why it's C and not A or B? Because A or B were used for floppy, which are no longer used now, but traditionally it was used for floppy, right? So we start with C, that's usually your OS and Windows, and then D and all the other subsequent letter. Can it be Z? Sure, you just have to assign it the letter. Remember how I showed you the disk management earlier, right? Like this, you can use disk management. And then if you have unallocated space, if I shrink this down, I would have a gray section that will say unallocated. That means just drive space that's not assigned to anything yet. Then I can use that and I can format it with any file system I want, and I would assign a letter to it, and it will let me choose the letter that's still available. Can I make it C? No, because it's already been used for my OS. Okay. All right, does the system match number 9? Yes. Okay. Then we are going to look at display next. We already looked at some of the information on our adapter. So go back to settings and then go to display. So here is where you would be able to, change. And some of you have done this at home where you have dual monitor or sometimes 3 monitors, right? If your adapter is capable of doing that, you can plug them in and you need to configure it here, or use the property of your adapter. Right click, go to property, and then configure. So here is where you can look at, you can change your color settings, your scale layout, and then your resolution. Most of your high definition currently for your system, unless your adapter and your monitor supports 4K. 4K just means that it's 4,000 and up, right? And then this would be like roughly 2K. So it's close to 2,000. Okay, so that means it's the pixel size. So display resolution recommended. So let's answer those questions. Take a screen capture so we can do print screen. Another way that you can also do screen capture is do snipping, right? When you use snipping tool, you just click new and then you drag it like a rectangular. That way you can just cut a section, not the whole thing, and then you can paste it. It automatically copy that for you as you snip, and then you can do Control V like that. So the resolution I have on this is 1920 by 1080, which is pretty standard. Now the refresh rate is important. Okay. Let's see if it shows this on the new one. Display settings. Yeah, so all right. You're here. If you want to see refresh rate, you're going to click on advanced display setting, which is the second from the bottom. It tells you the resolution again here. The active resolution should be close to it. The refresh rate is 60 Hertz, which is pretty standard for these type of monitor. Now, if you shop for a monitor and you read into it, you would know that the higher the refresh rate, the better it is for your eyes. Your eyes, when you look directly at the monitor, you don't see the refresh rate. What it does is it refreshes the screen. If you ever take your phone and you're recording a monitor, you see how it flickers, right? That's actually refresh cycle, right? Or you're recording directly or aiming on the side of it, you would see it. But your eye, it's so fast because our eye frequency doesn't catch it directly when we're looking at it. But your smartphone or video recorder, it's on a different refresh rate, so it actually sees it at a different frequency, so it detects it. Yeah. So your refresh rate is 60 Hertz. Record is actually better, like a few seconds. Okay. So if you have a monitor that you can change this, you can increase it. And the higher the refresh rate, the better it is for your eyes. Okay. Because our eye frequency is actually, it's.
Yeah.
So all this is happening in real time.
Yes.
What?
Yep.
All right. Color format and space.
So the law of
Color
attraction-
format is red, green, and blue. That's what RGB stands for. I'm sure you know this because some of you shop for RGB colorful case for your computer. And traditionally, your old monitor only had these 3 colors. Okay, remember the big bulky monitor? So those are called CRT, cathode ray tubes. And it has these long tubes. So it took those 3 color and mixed variation or percentage of those colors to give you other colors, right? Like if you have purple, that's gonna be yellow and blue, and so on. Okay, so we can put RGB. And then let me see if it puts any space there. Standard dynamic range, your SDR. And we do have a chapter on monitor and display, right? The difference between LED and LCD and CRT and so on. Now, so you get a little bit of information about how you would be able to control your display through these settings, right? I don't just want to show you once and then you're like, oh, it's there. But the whole point in this is we can change it if we want. If it's capable, right? I'm already at the max for this one. So the refresh rate on this is already at 60. I can't go any further. But if you have a higher end monitor, it will say 100 hertz or higher, then you can change that, right? And then they also sell filter for your screen, so it filters out the blue light, which because you know the impact of the blue light is that it causes wear and tear to your eyes, and also you know that blue light actually keeps you awake at night when you're looking at your phone, right? You know that. So before you go to sleep, when you start watching all those video on your phone or on your tablets or on your computer, the blue light is what it activates in your brain signal, and then so you can't fall asleep as quick.
Isn't there glasses to like block that?
Yes.
Yeah, and they sell filter for monitor and stuff like that too. Yeah. But better yet, just you should have time where you have less screen time, because you have screen time all the time, right? All right. And then here you can choose the type of display that you want. So this connects to a specific port, right? And that would be aligned to the display interface. And so you can always go back, and you can also change on how you want to arrange your display. So when do I need to do this? When I have multiple monitors, when I have to have projections, and so on, right? You notice that at my workstation, I have 2, because some faculty, they use one. Sometimes when I give final in class, you know, I would monitor the students on one, like I could see all the screen in this room, right? By turning on a software. And then I would, you know, show them, you know, the password to the final exam on another. So if you set up projection and things like that, you would need to access this setting. And this is very common for technicians to do, because, you know, a lot of the times they would ask you to come in and set this up in the courtroom, you know, in you know, a dealership, etc. Display is very common. Hotels, yes.
In high school, I took computer repair, and the teacher told us, be careful where you surf on the internet, because I can see everything.
Mhm.
And then he showed me how he had the screen of all the little monitors. And the thing that got me was he told me, be careful what you type into, because I can see every letter that you type. Is that true?
If he has a keylogger, he can actually record everything you type.
Even the mouse, how I'm using it.
Yeah, I guess some school they allow that, because you know, because the students are minor and they want to. There's regulations against for IT implementation for underage students. Like we have to filter certain content on the network to protect them and protect their privacy. So that's why. But some company, they would install, you know, software that reads cookies. So when you visit, you know, website, it uses cookie and it will read the cookie content. So it will say what kind of website you went to. So if I'm supposed to be doing work and I'm doing shopping on Amazon, they would know by reading my cookies. Yeah, and then also your browser history.
I remember, I forgot how they told me, but I remember it was a coworker. He told me that in high school, I don't know what he did, but he just went on the dark web using the internet, the school's stuff. But I forgot what he told me. That something about a VPN and a proxy and it's like.
Yeah, so you can use VPN to kind of shield your traffic. And then you can use, yeah, you basically use different connections in order to, you can hop around so that way they don't see where you actually go. Okay. For those of you on Zoom, do you have any question for me? Let me see if I'm supposed to be able to hear you, but let me see if I can. You can also type it into chat.
Every time someone went on the website, I was able to see where the location was.
Okay, okay.
It's the map of the US.
All right, good. So I'm gonna stop share and then I'm gonna stop recording. I will put the video up tonight.